All right, good
All
morning,
right.
sir. If you would, what's your name, what branch of service, and how many years?
Yeah, so my name's Josh Porthouse. I was in the Marine Corps. I just got off active duty about 18 months ago, but I've just hit 16 years this 3 weeks ago.
16 years, that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
Um, you said you just got out a couple weeks ago. How you doing with the transition?
It was it was the most unprepared I think I've ever felt for something I was 100% sure I was prepared for. And it was just a game changer, man. And I think the biggest thing for me came down to maybe worth, confidence, esteem, right? These types of things. Um, my wife has a job, so she's a breadwinner right now, so that helped, right? I wasn't as stressed. My pride took a hit, but I
Understood.
wasn't as stressed. But when it came to what I was doing physically or behaviorally or emotionally, just my actions and responses, it was worth. That was the issue because my role societally didn't match my identity anymore.
Understood.
Like we take, I mean, you could say across the DoD for that matter, it's a genius business model as an industry, right? We take 17 to 26 year olds on average. When your brain's still forming, your rationale, your frontal lobe, whatever, I don't know. We'll talk to a neurologist later or something, right? But like all that stuff's still happening, and you retrain people how to perceive society and the worldview, and then you train them into when you recognize these problem sets or these patterns around these problem sets, these are your most efficient, respective, lethal, effective responses. And then that's all you know, times in my case 16 years. And then you get out and you're like, well, I'm just going to Walmart today. You're like, well, maybe I'll stay in today, you know? And
We both know this. Being Marines, they are the best at reprogramming young men and women.
yeah,
My opinion, and you can hopefully elaborate on this more. They don't really deprogram us when we're leaving.
no,
How do you feel about that? What would you suggest to a young person that is on their way out? How to maybe deal with it or handle it? Do you have any suggestions? I know you're
call
still
me,
new. Yeah,
like,
I love that.
or
See, say that again.
yeah, call me, like I guess go through veteran voices, right? You guys get in touch with me. I don't want everybody calling my phone, but like, there's a difference, right? Like, you, well, I'll put it to you like this: I spent the majority of my career in the infantry, and then 2019 I got into intel, and between the two, in fact, the only reason I stayed in those two, in my opinion, you can't stay in the infantry and expect to reintegrate into society effectively. There's going to be some difficulty, maybe even some recidivism, and you're going to go spend time in the trees just because you want to be by yourself. So that you can't do that. It's difficult. Getting into intel, I got into a specialty and in a capacity where I was able to take the same tactical level expertise, specialty, billet, rank, whatever applied, and translate it into a different sphere of society. It wasn't in the physical space anymore. It was in the knowledge space, in the information space. So I could impact and affect people's behaviors and help them through whatever means, education, conversation, just be present and listen to somebody, whatever it was, right? But that became my new mission set when I lap moved. So to take those two experiences and then get off active duty, get out of this organization where the better part of, I don't want to say the mature part of my adult life, right? Necessarily not accurate either, but my adult life, that's how I learned to view the world. And so for me, I think I got lucky because 3 years ago I started a podcast, and what we talk about is with veterans, first responders, their families, how do you reinstigate self worth? But that's why I talked about it, because I didn't have anybody to talk to. And so, the first couple months, I created, I mean, literally, it was just me, my cell phone, and a coffee table. and I created personalities. I gave them accents. I divvied up my emotional baggage, gave them backstories, and talked to myself, these characters, about my problems. And eventually people started calling me. And then I had them on the show and it built it out. But what it taught me was it was the exact same growth scale and metric of moving into some sort of hostile environment, the reception, the staging, onward movement, integration considerations, the tactical, operational, strategic sort of parallels to frame the environment and, prep the battle space. I didn't have to change any of those things. And so it took a lot of pressure off of me because I started realizing initially I'm seeing the same problem sets: incompetence, disrespect, a lack of efficiency and effectiveness, and an increased need for training, and increased need to decrease attrition, like all the same stuff. But my responses were inappropriate or ineffective. And I said, man, now I'm a failure because I don't know how else to respond. I got told, you're wrong. You can't treat me like one of your soldiers. I got divorced. You can't respond the same way here. And I said, why not? It's the same problem. But it's not. Just because it looks like a nail might be a screw. Just got to look closer, and a hammer doesn't help both situations. My point in saying all that is, what would I offer as advice when you think you're going to get out, or even after the fact when you do? Don't be afraid to discover a new village. Build out your tribe. Go find the key leaders, figure out who's got some influence, some authority, and ask some questions. And when you do, and when you get in there, you don't have to shoot everybody you meet. Chill for a second, put your Kevlar down, and have a conversation, drink some tea, and talk about it. And give yourself the grace to process. It's just going to take time. You can't take over a city in a day. I think we've seen that in countries all over the past couple months. Give it some time, and eventually you get change, good, bad, or indifferent, but it gives you time to process. It's not an overnight thing. And I underestimated that learning curve drastically.
To your point, we have to be able to accept those changes.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to understand that we can't speak to civilians the same we've spoken to our sailors and Marines for years, yeah?
Absolutely.
Kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
What age did you join and why?
I was 22, and I didn't have any better ideas. It was that simple. I got out of high school at 18 and went to college because I didn't know I had any other options. It was just what I was groomed to do. You get out of high school, you're going to college. You do an assignment, you're getting good grades. If not, I was punished. I had a job, worked my way through high school, just because that's what it was. It's just what it had to be as far as I knew. Graduated college after a really strong 4.5 years because I threw one away. And then I said, okay, well, I actually have no idea what I want to do. I don't know what I learned. I don't know what I accomplished. I didn't know how to apply any of the book smarts. Dude showed up, asked how many pull-ups I could do if I wanted to run 3 miles and send me to OCS. And I said, well, let's go, man. Sure, whatever. So summer between my junior and senior year of college, I went to St. Leo University up here in Pasco. And so I went to OCS for the Marine Corps in Quantico. And 6 weeks later, I was med-sept. I had multiple fractures in both legs. And they said, hey, dude, I passed the PFT with multiple fractures in both legs at Quantico. And they said, all right, go see the corpsman, get some ibuprofen. And I think I was on 3,000 milligrams a day or something like that. And they said, oh, you're halfway there, man. All you got to do is walk across the stage. You can get with medical after you leave here, And I said, well, okay, yeah, let's go, see what we can do. And I don't know if you're familiar, maybe some of your other guests are, but a tenet, I guess, a principle at OCS that is mandatory is if you go see officer candidate school, if you go see the corpsman or the medical team on day 1, day X, whatever, 24 hours later, no matter what, it's a mandatory follow-up. And so I woke up the next morning. We had I remember graphically, we had a small unit leadership evaluation the next morning. Obstacle course and tests and whatever. You work on a small team. they gauge your decision making, I guess, and a few other factors. And I said, all right, cool, let's go. I slammed a bunch of anti-inflammatories and some painkillers and said, all right, let's go. And the drill instructor came up and he said, nope, you're going to medical. And I said, no, I'm all right. I can get through this. Let me go. And he said, no, you're going to medical. I said, I believe you, but like, you know, and there was some tact here, right? I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but at the time, right? And so he said, no, that's the policy. You're going for a follow-up. When you're done, we'll get you back out there for the evals, you know, whatever, no problem. It's okay. And we'd already started to transition the degree of professionalism that course necessitates, because you get out of, you know, you go in sort of inferior and you get out sort of superior to your instructors, right? So we started to shift a little bit. Well, I got out after the follow-up and got pulled into the company commander's office, and he said, hey, man, you missed a graded event. You can't make it up. We don't have the time in the schedule. I said, well, yeah, because you told me to miss the graded event. And he said, well, that's the policy. You're going home.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went in for a review board with the battalion commander, and he hobbled in on my crutches and sat down on my little stool there in front of his desk, and my company commander was there, my platoon commander was there, and he was sitting there in the middle at the desk, and he said, hey, you can't stay. You missed the event. And I said, well, if that's the policy, everybody's, you know, it is what it is. And he said, oh, well, I mean, you can come back if you want to reapply, but yeah, that was easy. Okay, do you have any questions for me? And it was that quick. It was that short. And I said, okay, well, then no, I guess I don't. I'll see you later. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate the experience points, and walked out the door, right? Come to find out in hindsight, had I pressed the issue a little bit, he probably would have let me stay.
He was checking your dedication, maybe?
Yeah. But again, my background perspective was, oh, well, if this is what it is what it is. Why question it? It just didn't even occur to me that there were any other options. Till after the fact, I started learning some other considerations and settings and things. And anyway, so then I enlisted, because I figured, okay, well, if I'm going to go back, which I intended to initially, I said, if I'm going to go back, how could I do that effectively when I didn't see that coming, to then train to tell somebody else, right? My ability to exude informed consent and confidence wasn't there. That's what I started to realize. So I enlisted, because I figured, what else am I going to do? Why wouldn't I? But it was that easy. And then I reapplied to OCS for 5 times throughout my career.
Really, 5 times?
5 times.
That's...
And I didn't get any other responses except board results, no name. Board results, no name. Board results, no name. Every
what do you
time.
mean by board results?
Well, so to go to places like officer candidate school, you have to be able to submit an application just like any other job selection process. And when you do, whoever that presiding, you know, recruiting team happens to be, throughout the DoD per branch, it's some sort of a panel of people with experience in that field, right? Just like any other company or corporation or organization, you're not requesting a position from people that don't know the industry. You know what I mean? You're going to meet somebody that's recruiting on behalf of that business, or knows that job, or is trained to be in that sales force or whatever. And so when I say board, I just mean a panel of people that review your application. And this is before AI.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, back in the, I don't know, 2009, 8 or 9, something like that, right? And so this is before smartphones, way back in the good old days, you know? But yeah, so we had people reviewing applications, and the board, the panel, reviewed it. And I don't know if the policy's changed. From what I've seen over the years, it hasn't. But you get told, it's literally printed, like you made the tryouts, you made the team, you know, but it's printed, and it says these are the people going on these dates to these courses. In this example, going to officer candidate school. And so all I knew was after each one of those application submission windows were over, the panels or the boards would meet and convene, and then my name wouldn't be in the results. But I would call. They'd have somebody you can contact if you have questions. And I called every single time. What can I do different? What can I do different? Why isn't this working? And what I got told was, sorry, honey, I don't sit on the board. I just see the results. And you can't directly contact members of the board, because then it skews a little bit of, injects a little bias.
Okay, favoritism.
Potentially, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can't contact the board directly. Well, the biggest issue then is, well, how do I know what to fix? I guess I'll just do it again next year, you know? And so the first time I was junior enlisted, second time I was an NCO, third time I was an NCO, the fourth time I was a staff NCO. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do different. Like, am I missing periods or am I just off the mark completely? Is there something in my record that says I can't do this? Am I wasting my time? Until eventually, I just got tired of it. And I was like, well, man, the only advice I was getting was, if you want it bad enough, keep trying. And I said, well, I don't want it bad enough anymore. This is stupid. Like, I'm continuing to volunteer to say I understand my strengths and how to capitalize on them or complement them, how to find them in other people, how to hire in spite of or against or align with them. And I understand my deficiencies. I've reconciled them, or where my gaps are and how I can supplement them. And I put it all on paper to have nobody say anything back. You know what? Maybe it's me then. All right, fine. I'll just work on me. So I stopped applying. That's when I lat moved. And I said, okay.
What do you mean by lat move?
Yeah, so a lateral move in the Department of Defense, it's all a horizontal playing field, right? And then it gets more responsibility accrues, accountability accrues based on rank and time in service. But any time in your respective column of, call them occupational fields, infantry, artillery, intelligence, right, within that field, if you want to move any particular job in there, it's a horizontal movement because you're not moving up in rank or down in rank.
You're just trying to change jobs
within that field, or in some cases, field to field. But it's all still that same horizontal level,
Understood.
Respectively. So it's called a lateral move. And yeah, so I said, all right, well, everything in the Marine Corps is focused specifically around combat arms, more specifically around the infantry. Right? And combat arms being anything supporting the infantry, going out into the battlefield. Like I said, artillery.
Beans, band-aids, and bullets.
Exactly. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that because I couldn't see a future in it. I'd been an acting platoon commander. I'd been a platoon sergeant. I'd been a squad leader, a section leader. I was with anti-tank, combined anti-armor team, right? And I had 7 vehicles and close to almost $21 million worth of equipment that I was signing for. And still, I couldn't get somebody to tell me, you missed the period, man.
Yeah.
You know, nothing. What more could I do? I was designing ranges. I was running rifle ranges. I was CPR and AED certified, and I had all sorts of other schools under my belt. And, you know, combat hunter, and I'd even gone to the Defense Language Institute for Mandarin.
Wow.
I spent 18 months there and had reapplied. And still, people were like, nah, I don't think so. You know, I'm not getting any responses. And I said, man, like, do I need to do more squats? Is it a pull-up thing? Like, what is this, you know? I went through the martial arts program, got all the belts I could. I went through and became a force fitness instructor, and I was building training programs for a battalion 90 days at a time, measuring with benchmark. And I was like, dude, I don't know what else to stand on here. I'm getting, you know, basically promote above peers. And somebody at the DOD is either seeing something in my record, I don't know, they're not getting it at all, or they're just saying it's not good enough. Doesn't fit what we need. Maybe overqualified in hindsight, I don't know. But like, it just didn't match up, right? And so for me, it was this, especially sitting here now in hindsight, it was this continual question of, am I good enough? And then this continual sort of scalability of, I don't know that I am. But what it turned into was, I started losing confidence that I was, right? As opposed to ignorance that I was or wasn't. It actually started to impact my behavior, my emotional status, the way I was perceiving the world, even the information I was taking in, because I couldn't focus. I was doom scrolling on social just because I didn't have any other thoughts in my head. I was like, I don't know how to be productive. I'm just a waste. I'm just sitting.
So maybe like getting into a depression because
Yeah.
of all of the no's.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was inadvertent, right? I'm pretty sure nobody meant to do that. Yeah, that'd be a stupid TRICARE bill for somebody, right? But, you know, everybody wants to, or seems to want to get into the DOD for TRICARE and benefits. I mean, think about it. You're volunteering to serve your country. And I don't have a bitter taste about it, but this is, how I've reframed it to make sense of it. You're volunteering to serve your country, which is heroic, and the service and the duty and the sacrifice and everything that comes with that, generally speaking, from like a consumer-facing perspective, is true. Absolutely. And the values that come with that, the character development that comes with that, is incalculable. The benefit there, because in my case, every branch is a little different.
Agreed.
But as soon as we pulled up to Paris Island on that bus, and I had my chin in between my knees as I was getting yelled at to get off the bus, everything changed. And I don't mean like the shock value, because that's obviously the intent, but that was the event horizon in my character that
The
shifted.
old crap moment.
Well, yes, but you remember the recruiting commercials for the Marine Corps where the guy was climbing the mountain and he got to the top and Dragon Pillar of Fire, Sword Manual, Blues, right?
Yeah.
But that is what it is.
It is.
Metaphors and analogies aside, not one time did I get coated in fire. Would have been cool, didn't happen. It's okay, not bitter. But what I did have was a cave, trials, the dragon to slay, the internal struggle, the battle, and then the discipline on the other side. That's since shifted because I don't need that degree of discipline anymore. I don't need that degree of lethality anymore. I'm a realtor, I'm bringing blue collar values into a white collar industry. I'm not bringing an M4 into a dirt hut, right? So it changes the application of what I've learned, but the values and the character that I got are what directly pulled me through all of that stuff the last couple of years, specifically even more the last 18 months.
That transition that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, man, because you build a certain degree of what I guess I'll call resiliency, literacy. You start to learn how, if you're lucky, you start to learn how your, not decisions, but experiences can impact your worldview or just your own internal clock, your barometer, and you start to see, like in my case, I built a business plan for real estate based on a sand table exercise that we did in my platoon, right? Because we had just gotten a bunch of new guys from Camp Geiger in North Carolina, which is the infantry school on the east coast of the U.S. And I was at Lejeune at the time, also North Carolina. And we went and picked these guys up. It was a lot, maybe 8-10 guys in one graduating class. Just to our platoon, which was like 36 people. Like, that was a lot in one go. And then we went out to our first training exercise, and they just didn't have the experience. They had the book smarts from infantry school, but they didn't have the practical application of this is what this is what it's like to shoot an AT-4 rocket or something.
It's back to your original point. That's what's lacking from the college. You get the book. But
so you see what I'm
not
saying?
the practical, yes.
So you see what I'm saying? The patterns are the same. And the point here is that we getting out of the military or off active duty are not off the mark. We can still use the same strengths, patterns, habits of thought, even to a degree, habits of action. We just have to change the application. It's just a different environment. You can't wear jungle boots in the Arctic. You know what I mean? You just have to change how you're applying what you know, but you're probably going to be just as effective if you can make the trade. And what that requires is a training program. So we've got transition assistance program the DoD's developed, right? In accordance with Syracuse University, University of Mississippi, Institute for Veterans and Military Families, all sorts of other parties involved here. Cool. I went through it twice. Yeah. And they said, all right, what's your plan when you get out? I said, I'm going to be a realtor and run a podcast. I'm going to take over the world. And they said, yeah, sounds like you got a plan. Sign here. And I said, okay. What? You're telling me you let me get out of a totally salaried position, 6-figure income, company vehicle, you're paying for fuel, travel, food, shelter, whatever. All my needs are met. and I tell you that I've got a commission-only position that I'm willing to apply for with no benefits, no income, no insurance, no dental, no nothing, and you say, sounds good, man.
Yeah.
What? Who would do that anywhere else? You know, my son's 11 now, and if he said, Dad, I want to do this, this, and this, and I say, okay, cool. You know, there's waitresses in Chile with better job description plans and supporting plans than I have right now as a realtor. You know, I'm sorry, you get health benefits at Chili's as a waitress? I don't have that. What are we doing? You know, so to look at some of those kinds of things, and then I hear people talk about, well, you volunteered for this and you got TRICARE, and you know, you'll be fine, your family will get taken care of if anything happens. All those things are true in the brochure, in the textbook, absolutely. And it shouldn't be a reason to beat yourself up. It shouldn't be a reason to hold yourself too high in stature either, in my opinion. But to understand that we have those things, because generally speaking, it's going to be difficult to adapt. You're what, 40s? Creeping on 50s?
52.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. 52 years old. How easy would it be for you now to learn another language?
Oh, it's harder as I get older.
But why?
Yeah.
You know how to communicate. You've done it for half a century. Why is it so difficult to learn how to communicate again? It's the same skill set. It's just different patterns. It's just different sounds.
The Marines, we all know, you know, adapt, overcome, and
Right.
accomplish the mission.
You'd figure it out. Draw pictures in the sand if you have to.
Right. You know.
Yeah. And that changes everything, I think, trying to understand or starting to understand that we're not as unprepared as we think we are. It's just an unfamiliar operating environment. It's just different.
So your point, going from Arctic to desert, I've got to change my tactics.
That's it. But I didn't have to create new ones.
No.
I just have to change the ones that I was using to fit a different environment, different time and place and climb. And you go from, you know, the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, and it just, that's it, you know. And okay, I don't actually have to change as much as I thought. I'm not telling people to focus on an area of operations anymore, but I'm telling people to prioritize some sort of primary focus to minimize anxiety. Let's focus on what's closest to the boat now, and we can deal with that tomorrow. We'll call the title company the next day. Everything will be fine. You know, whatever. But it's still, first things first. It's still brilliance in the basics. Understand the science and the complexity, fluidity, uncertainty, and everything comes with that. And then process it one piece at a time. What's the battle plan for the campaign? Let's go. Hit the benchmarks, hit the phase lines, go to the next one.
Kind of already, I was going to get the question of what would you tell a 17, 18-year-old, 22-year-old kid? You kind of covered that pretty good.
Well,
if you want to add a little to it, you can.
I will actually.
Yeah.
I'll put it into one sentence. Stop and learn you first.
I like that.
That's it. Like I said, my son's 11 right now, and we talk about this pretty regularly to whatever effect and impact, I don't know yet. But we talk about this pretty often, where you can have as good a time as you want. I don't care if you want to play video games 18 hours a day, but you're going to explain to me what those video games are going to teach you about you, or about business, or about working with other people, or building teamwork, and whatever. What did you learn? If you're not learning anything, you're wasting your time. If you just want to be entertained, then what you've learned is downtime's important too. And I can accept that. But if what you've learned is check out this YouTube video, well, what is that accomplishing right now? Right? And now we're at hour 17 and today you're on YouTube, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? But stop and learn you first. There's plenty of time to learn other stuff. There's plenty of organizations that are going to teach you and train you into how they want you to view things. I shot rifles before I joined the Marine Corps, and they said, that's wrong, do it our way. And I was, well, it's not. It's a trigger. What are you talking about? Okay, they trained me. Fine. But they'd also train the brand new guys that never shot before, and the guys that had rifle qualifications from NRA tournaments, you know? Like, so then that doesn't matter. It helps because you're not as nervous. It helps because you're not as anxious, but it doesn't help the skill set, the hard science, right? What it directly points out is the biggest issues in transition are internal.
I like that.
So stop and learn you first.
That's an amazing point. Being a realtor, you know about the VA loans, post 9/11 GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Have you used any of those benefits, handed them down to your son, put him on the back burner for him, lady? I mean, do you have any of that?
Yes is the answer to all those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I've lived on both coasts of the United States as duty stations. 29 Palms, Camp Lejeune, Monterey, California, Virginia Beach, specifically, throughout my career. And I've bought at every location I've been at through the VA loan. And the VA is not loaning any money. The VA is guaranteeing to whoever the lender is that they will offset at least 75% of whatever the value of that property is. And then the lender is going to have to assume the risk of 25%. Okay, the loan to value there is the guarantee from the VA. And so they vouched for the service member to do that, right? So what that metric is satisfying is how much you have to put as a down payment then on that property. So in order to get zero down in 4 different major cities around 4 different major Marine Corps bases around the country, I didn't pay a dime. I didn't pay closing costs. I didn't pay down payment. I put down a little money for earnest money in the beginning, good faith, right? But that was it. And then everything else got paid out at closing, and I just have to pay the mortgage. I thought that was a great idea. I thought it was a great deal. You know what it wasn't, though? Educational. Because I didn't save any money then either. I didn't pay it down. I wasn't worried about it. I said, dude, I make BAH, mortgage is paid, forget it. I don't have to worry about it. I can go focus on tactics or training or whatever I'm doing. Financially, it didn't set me up for anything. Because right now, I could have had 4 properties probably paid off, rented, whatever, scaled. I didn't do any of that. I went to a new duty station, I sold it, and I repeated the same steps. Because what I was told was, you got to have 100% of your entitlement from the VA to be able to guarantee to buy another one. There's a bonus entitlement. That's not true. I can get qualified for 2 properties at 0 down, potentially. Yeah. Oh, I can get qualified for 3 properties at 0 down, potentially. Hold and rent, whatever I want to do. Take the equity, purchase, whatever. That is a great benefit, but there was no education around it. So there's good and bad with the program. In terms of direct compensation for employment, it's great. In terms of education, viability, long-term growth, like to benefit me in my livelihood, I'll own it. I didn't know any better, but I didn't know the questions to ask either. So now that's a huge part of my brand. It revolves around education. It's not just as a realtor, it's just as a human. Because that was one of the biggest deficits that I realized I fell into. I was uneducated because I didn't realize the questions to ask. So now I've just learned to start with very broad questions and see what I can learn, right?
Definitely.
But the GI Bill was the same thing to me. You know, I didn't know I could transfer the GI Bill, which now you have to serve 12 years active duty in order to transfer it and have those changes stick. You have to be able to, I think it's serve 8 years in order to be eligible to transfer it to immediate family. Well, it worked out great for me. I didn't get to use any of it, but it worked out great for me. You know, I kept 1 month, 30 days worth, because that was the minimum required to be able to rescind if I needed to. But then I transferred half of that to my son, and it stuck. And I transferred the difference there to my ex-wife so I didn't have to pay so much. And good. That offset some costs, right? So there was another indirect benefit to the program. But the biggest, I think, now in hindsight, the biggest reason for opportunities like subsidized education when you get off active duty is because you're going to have to relearn when you get off active duty. You can't take everything 1-to-1, apples to apples, dollar for dollar, whatever the expression. Nope, you're going to have to learn something. And you might prefer to do it for free for a couple years and do it at school than you would to get a job, be a realtor, Department of Labor, something or other, and have to slog through it and figure it out on your own. The fast track is just go back to school. It's free, it's paid for, and you get an income.
Yeah,
Please.
You get basic housing allowance, E5, married, at
That's
wherever
it.
you're at. It's beautiful. Yeah.
That's it. And the transition there is the compensation package is the constant. The environment and the atmosphere is all that changes, so you don't have to worry about all these variables all at once.
So,
good programs could be better in execution.
I agreed. I mean, nothing's perfect, and we all
Yeah.
got to figure it out and educate ourselves. So you have a son.
Yep.
Imagine if their child was watching this video. What message would you like to leave them personally? Or your great grandkids? Because this is part of this program. This is something that you get to leave your future generations. It's a hard question. We can come back to it.
No, I don't mind. I think about it pretty often, actually. But I think what I'd stick with on record here is, as plainly as I can put it, I suppose, is don't be so afraid to be yourself that you lose sight of what's socially acceptable. You have to be your own person and stand for something, but you can't be an asshole in the process.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be some harmony. But if you can do that, the world's yours. You know, be able to be willing to learn and unlearn and relearn, but do it in your style. That's fine. You know, play to your strengths in a room full of your weaknesses. That's fine. Something good's bound to happen, right? It's just a matter of time. So, yeah, don't be so afraid to be yourself that you lose sight of the respect, I guess, for other people's boundaries.
You can't always hold everyone to your standard.
You can't.
No.
You can't. You know, working on small teams, working in a platoon, trying to get people to follow orders, good luck. If you want it done your way, and this is the Marine Corps writ large too, if you want it done your way, you will have a huge attrition problem. If you want it done within left and right lateral limits, this is acceptable. You've widened the aperture enough to be professionally agreeable, and you've decreased attrition in the process. You know, it's the same principle.
We're gonna sum it up with two things.
Mm.
Number one, I know you're doing podcasts and you're helping vets.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hit that up, give us the information, plug that a little bit so
Yep.
we can get your name and information out there to vets that need the help?
Absolutely. So what I've done over the last 18 months is partner with 3 specific nonprofits here in the Tampa Bay area to be able to build out my village, which directly involves helping veterans and first responders and their families. One of them is Florida Veterans Coalition. The other is the American Legion, Post 108 in Pasco County, out of Lutz, Land O'Lakes, and Wesley Chapel. And the third is an organization called Advon Foundation. And among them, our combined focus revolves around shelter, employment, and disaster relief for veterans, first responders, and their families, to include my own real estate brand and budding real estate team. We train towards all the same stuff. You've got to get involved in a nonprofit. You've got to get involved in some sort of volunteer outreach, whatever you want to do. And then obviously you've got to be able to educate people as well. Otherwise, you're not consulting, you're not selling, you're not doing any good in this industry. Towards that end, going to transactingvaluepodcast.com gets you access to almost 250 conversations, 250 some odd hours of content about how other people hit bottom and stood on their values and character to rediscover some sense of self-worth. Going to floridaveterans.org gets you to Florida Veterans Coalition's website, where you can either go through our partner company, Onward Ops, and get partnered with any sponsor in any county around the state of Florida to be able to find employment, find shelter, or just get in touch with somebody who's local to your zip code that you might just want to talk to and find somebody like-minded. It gets you into the Florida Veterans Employment Network, where you put in your skill sets, your OC field, your specialty, and you get shown a list of businesses and organizations that are looking for people with those traits and skill sets, and the job descriptions of what they're looking for that match those features, right? American Legion Post 108 is one of only 2 American Legion posts, nonprofit, that own a cemetery. Veteran service organizations are not all, most are, but are not all about let's drink and play bingo. We don't even have a physical post building. We go to Plantation Palms, which is a golf community in Land O'Lakes, and we go to their clubhouse. They lease it out to us twice a month, and while we're there, we talk about, as a philanthropic nonprofit organization, how can we benefit local veterans in the area regarding veteran affairs and rehab, children and youth, national security, and Americanism. And those are the 4 pillars of the American Legion. We choose as a post to integrate those into a philanthropic mission set. Community events, fundraising, whatever, right? Supporting Tunnel to Towers and other mutually supported organizations. So that's American Legion, post108.com. Advon Foundation, I'm the secretary on their board. And the reason I decided to work with them is because their focus is executive level and C-suite level service members. E7, E8, E9, 05, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the reason that that demographic is their focus is because we need that psychographic as a focus. It changes as you move up that vertical climb, right? And so if we can work with those individuals to understand this is what corporations, private sector organizations, nonprofits, whoever, look for and how they view the military, this is how you can start educating people before they get out in your respective commands. And then we're able to bridge the gap 12, 13 months before people get off active duty so they can find purpose when they get out in an environment that they're more readily able to interpret and accept. And that's advonfoundation.org.
I'm glad that you're finding that gap, because I honestly personally believe that transition out, the lack of education, the lack of assistance there. Yes, we have TAPS, but it's not complete, and it's void a lot. The last part of the interview, this is your mission statement. What do you want to walk off the stage with? I know it's difficult. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It can be whatever you want.
Task, just purpose, commander. You're real demanding.
Peace out or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think I'll sum it up by saying this: the sooner you can stop and learn you, the sooner you can build out your village, the sooner they'll carry you to the finish line and accomplish whatever mission you've got. So, in my opinion, what I've built into my brand, what I've adopted in my business plan as my actual mission set, is educate, empower, encourage, and instigate self-worth for veterans, first responders, and their families. And I think if you can find something broad enough like that, targeted enough like that, that already aligns with your purpose and skill sets before you get out, you just reappropriate it, realign it, move it into a new environment, rinse and repeat. That's what I think makes, especially the U.S. military, so effective. So why reinvent the wheel?
I like that. On Pinellas County Veterans Association and Veterans Voices, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your service.
Absolutely.
It was an honor, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, sir.